Welcome to Daily Papers, the podcast where we break down one interesting research paper every day. Today, we're asking a question that sounds like it's from a science fiction movie. Can an AI understand the moral of a story?
And not just understand it, but understand that the moral might change depending on who is reading it. We all know stories are a fundamental part of being human. They're how we pass down values and make sense of the world. But the lesson one person takes from a story might be totally different from someone else's.
Exactly. Take a classic like Aesop's fable, The Ant and the Grasshopper. An American reader might see the moral as hard work pays off, but someone from a more collectivist culture might interpret it completely differently, maybe as those with resources should share.
So stories are universal, but their lessons are not. That's the core idea behind this paper from Sophie Wu and Andrew Piper at McGill University. It's called Lessons Without Borders, Evaluating Cultural Alignment of LLMs Using Multilingual Story Moral Generation.
That is a mouthful. Let's break it down. First, LLMs. That stands for Large Language Models, which is the technology behind AI tools like ChatGPT and Gemini. The researchers wanted to see if these AIs could generate a story's moral, and if those morals would show the same kind of cultural variety we see in humans.
So how on earth do you test that? It sounds incredibly complicated.
It was a really clever setup. First, they collected plot summaries of 14 novels, each one from a different country and language. So a story from Korea, one from Egypt, one from Poland, and so on.
Okay, so they had 14 culturally distinct stories.
Then they translated every single story into all 14 languages. So the Korean story was available in Arabic, Polish, French, and all the others. This created a huge dataset. After that, they hired people from each of those 14 cultures to read the stories and write down in a single sentence what they thought the moral of the story was.
So that gives them a human baseline. It shows how real people from different backgrounds interpret these stories.
Precisely. Then came the final step. They gave the exact same task to a bunch of different AIs, from the big ones like GPT-4 and Gemini to some smaller models. They told the AI, read this story and tell me its moral.
Okay, the stage is set. Humans versus the machines. What did they find?
Well, the first result is pretty staggering. The big, powerful AI models like GPT-4 and Gemini were really good at this. The morals they generated were very similar in meaning to the ones written by humans.
So they passed the test?
They did more than pass. The researchers also ran a survey where they showed human readers a story and then two possible morals, one written by a human and one by an AI. They asked, which one do you prefer?
And
People consistently preferred the AI-generated morals.
whoa, why would that be?
The paper suggests that the AI morals might just be clearer. They're often very concise, perfectly worded, and get right to the heart of a very common interpretation. They're like the textbook perfect answer. But this is also where the problem begins.
I was sensing a but coming. So the AI morals are good, maybe even too good?
Exactly. The researchers then compared how much the morals varied across different cultures. The morals written by humans showed a small but meaningful amount of variation. An Italian reader and a Japanese reader might pull slightly different lessons from the same story.
Right, just like our ant and grasshopper example.
But the AIs, their morals showed significantly less variation. It didn't matter if the story was originally from Brazil or Sweden. The AI tended to produce very similar morals for everyone. It was basically smoothing out all the interesting cultural differences.
So it's a kind of cultural flattening. The AI is finding the most common, average, one-size-fits-all lesson and giving it to everybody, erasing the nuance.
That's a perfect way to put it. The paper gives a fantastic example. They looked at the morals generated for one story from the Netherlands. For this same story, GPT-4 generated morals that used the word justice for 12 of the 14 languages. The human morals were far more varied, talking about mistakes, trust, truth, and selflessness.
That's fascinating. The AI latches onto one central theme and just hammers it home, while the humans explore the story from lots of different angles.
And the researchers figured out why. They used a psychological framework of universal human values, things like security, power, benevolence, tradition. They categorized all the morals to see which values were being expressed.
What did they find?
They found that the AIs massively overrepresented the most common and widely shared values, especially things like security and benevolence or kindness, but they underrepresented the rarer, more specific, or socially contested values. The AI is playing it safe, sticking to the most obvious and agreeable themes.
The paper calls this a semantic centroid. It's like the AI isn't trying to think like a person from a specific culture. It's looked at everything humans have ever written and has calculated the mathematical average of what a moral should sound like.
It's a brilliant description. The AI isn't giving you an interpretation, it's giving you the average of all possible interpretations. It's technically accurate, but it misses the richness and diversity that makes us human.
So what's the big takeaway here?
On one hand, LLMs are demonstrating a really sophisticated ability to understand narrative and abstract a central theme. That's a huge leap. People even find their outputs preferable.
But on the other hand, they aren't capturing the world in all its diverse, messy cultural glory. They're giving us a slightly blander, more uniform version of our own stories. It suggests that if we rely too much on these tools to interpret our culture for us, we might lose some of the very diversity that makes it so interesting in the first place.
It's a classic story of a technology that's powerful, but maybe not wise. At least, not yet.